Or do we have
We have what? Good evening. Welcome to Investigator News. Oh, I think I have the wrong screen up here. Boy, William, I got you like a top notch and big. There we go.
Okay.
Now we're about the same size. My head's a little bigger than yours, but yeah. So I had the wrong screen up there. So, welcome to. I even Karen, you're supposed to remind me when I put up the wrong banners. I got talking with William. We had a big discussion before the show, so and that's why we're late. We were talking leprosy. Boy, William, that's something that I never expected. You read about it in biblical days and a little bit over there in the Middle East, but really here in the United States. So, welcome to William, the co-host, one of the host with the most. And I'm going to have him talking today. Boy, he's got a lot to say for a lot of the information that I have grabbed today. It does in a way look like chicken pox, William. And they thought maybe it was part of the pandemic, and they said no. There's evidence that this leprosy has become a southeastern of the United States. So, as I was telling William before the show, is I called our health department and they said yes, but it's mainly Arizona and over on the West Coast. So if you live over, I'm going to go all the way to New Mexico. If you New Mexico, and all the way over into the West Coast of California, be careful. Now, William was saying it's coming from those that can't get inoculated, and he was right. So, William.
So you have South American countries that don't inoculate their population to a great degree. And then they come in contact with people from Africa and the Middle East and Asia, and they don't have any antibodies, and so they immediately contract whatever they have. Then to add to it, make it worse, is they can't really be out in nature itself easily, so they're all congregating in places that are cooler, like buildings and stuff like that, and so they're never alone, and so then you get that one-to-one contraction, and that's what happens during the summer in the Southwest. Is you can't be out for any period of time, so people go inside and they share bugs.
Yeah. You're not seeing your picture.
I'll survive.
Karen's not. She likes that handsome picture of yours. So,
Karen.
and
Karen.
send them to.
She wants me to take her to see and pamper her. Oh my goodness.
She's, she's. I'm surprised we don't have like marshmallows or something else for her to throw yet. I'm looking. I've been trying to find something, stars or marshmallows or a food fight or something that doesn't hurt the TV. That's why we throw popcorn. See, I did that a long time ago. I found out when I get real mad at a newscast I don't like. Most time I got popcorn or fruit sitting around. I can't throw fruit at the TV, but I could throw popcorn. It doesn't hurt the TV. It just leaves little grease spots all over it. The housekeeper says, "How do you get this?" And I said, "Get what?" And she said, "You got grease spots all over your TV." This was like a decade ago. And I was like, well, popcorn maybe. And she got a kick out of it. All right. So Karen says we need to send them to live with Mayorkas. It's not going to be long if these guys are sneaking over the border, and that's what makes it illegal, folks. It's not that we don't want people to come through the ports or through where they can be logged in and given a court date. Now, there's these other ones that don't want to do that. They're swimming across. They're going across land that's open, and that's what makes them illegal. That's what makes it wrong. So, the Kremlin, William, now this is probably just all propaganda. Once again, the Kremlin threatens to use nuclear weapons if Ukraine takes Russian land and counteroffense. They said they're not going to hesitate to use nuclear weapons if Ukraine decides to cross any further over into land that Russia has taken. Well, that's going to happen. That's a gimme, isn't it, William? I mean, to me, that's propaganda.
Well, yeah, if for instance they're capable of doing that, which really they're not, Russia could see it as an existential threat. Whether they will or not, I think it's mostly hyperbole, just to let the West know that they're getting threatened, and they know they're being threatened. They're not going to take it.
Yeah. Well, but William, I don't know, since February, when this all started, there hasn't really been a month go by that we didn't hear of someone's going to get nuked. And we heard early on, even Putin said he would make a crater out of Ukraine. And he said, if you do this, this is what I'm going to do. Well, they've always backed off. It seems like over the last 4 or 5 months, we're just seeing troop buildup, not really the fear of a nuclear war.
So they have a lot of options before going nuclear. What he's saying is we're going to use all of our options. We're not going to play nice. We're going to go what's called in warfare called scorched earth, and you just simply leave nothing left.
Yeah. Well,
the United States doesn't engage in scorched earth, but the Eastern countries for millennia have engaged in scorched earth, because what that does is deprive the population of food and reduces the population, and thereby reduces the threat. So scorched earth is the way to go if you're one of these landlocked countries in Asia.
Okay, I got it up on my screen. I don't know if the chat room could see your picture or not.
Oh yeah, I'm very handsome.
He is that dark man with a hat. Yeah. All right. South Africa. Now, I have been looking into this for a long time. This has been probably 10, 15 years old that this has been going on. For the most part, the South African, let's see if it's got, now this is I think this isn't the same Julius Malema. He's part of South African leadership. Um,
ANC.
and what
The
he is big on is genocide of anybody white. And this is when a long time ago, when I got a hold of my friend, a couple of friends in Africa, and said, "Is this really happening?" And what they were doing is taking the farms away from the farmers and putting them on like holding them hostage in like an encampment. And then they were begging for people to come help them out, but this African leaders wouldn't let them loose. So
so this called. He's the leader of African National Congress, and I can tell you what's going on there, but I don't know if we'll get taken offline for. It's pretty. I guess we call it sensitive. People would see it as being racist, but I'm not being racist if I tell the information. I'm just simply.
that's why I stuck with genocide. They're doing a type of genocide.
The groups. So here's the problem. You've got a group of people that came from the Netherlands who initially settled South Africa, and they were the aggressive of the aggressive in the Netherlands, and they had fairly high IQs, 105 average. And they went to South Africa. Well, they were easily able to dominate. People don't realize that if you look at Africa as a whole, the IQ is in the 80s. So you send people through that have a 20-point higher IQ, and they just simply dominate. Well, what happens is these groups that can't compete, all right, they have a difficulty competing. They become emotional and they act on emotional reasons. Well, this leader of the African National Congress realizes that, and he plays on the emotions of these folks being frustrated at every angle from these folks that came in that are obviously not like them. They're got this pale skin, and it just enrages them, and that's what's going on.
Mm-hmm. So now this, I knew this study was going to come out, but it wasn't until the Republicans kind of took Congress, where they and Democrats, being bold, said, yeah, let's do this study on the EV cars. Of now that they've forced people to go buy them, they wanted to do a study on how efficient they are. And so Senate said they wanted to do their own study, and so did the Biden administration and their economic leaders. And it came back really bad. And what they're saying is it costs more for an electric car to run it than it would be just to put gasoline in. But the economic value.
You have power generation that loses 30% of its power out there on the power lines.
Mm-hmm.
Then you charge this vehicle and immediately have another 3% penalty of power loss to charge the batteries. Then when you use the batteries, now you have another 7% power penalty. We start adding all these up, and suddenly gasoline's not as terribly bad.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, now the whole thing is you can look at it cost efficiently, but now if you're looking at it for global pollution, well, actually, what they found out with their studies, if you take China aside and you put the rest of the world in with gasoline, it's not that bad. But when you add the pollution of China, then it rises. So that's where
Ellie, we've gone to electronic injection now in cars, and that means that's a big deal.
Clean fuel,
because we've gone from 8.5 to 1 compression in these engines, which is pretty mild so that all the fuel would burn. We've been able to go to 12 and 13 to 1 compression, which means we're with this injection, we're able to get so much more power out of so much less gas, and then that goes through a turbocharger, and we're piling up all that heat after the burn of the engine to go through turbochargers. That thereby is burning up any leftover fuel whatsoever. Then it goes down into a catalytic converter and converts it from carbon monoxide to carbon dioxide, and it's almost perfectly clean. You can take, it used to be you could take a hose, hook it to your car, and pump it into your car, and you die of asphyxiation. Well, that won't happen now unless the car is completely sealed with oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
You can breathe that forever, and it's not going to bother you one bit as long as there's other oxygen particles around. It's not going to poison you.
Yeah.
We're incredibly more efficient with fuel than we were in the 60s and 70s.
And the whole thing with the coal too. It was what was being dumped in the rivers that was a problem. It wasn't. We had come so far along for clean coal, but coal companies had to be stupid and pour their tailings into the rivers. That's what the problem was. Now, if we got them to stop that, the clean coal even wouldn't be that bad.
Well, you use the coal, if you burn it at higher temperatures like they do now than they did in the 60s and 70s when we got acid rain. Well, they've drove the temperatures up now. The sulfuric acid's being is being burned off in the process, and now we have the byproduct, which is carbon ash, right? Well, guess what that is? That's what they want to use to build all of our equipment out of.
So, I want to move on because boy, we got so much now. The troops are important, and we find that protecting boundaries, borders. I mean, we even send troops over, like we've got some sending over to Germany. I'll get to that a little bit. But on the border, the Pentagon is going to pull 1,000 troops back. They say it's unneeded, as the cartel are moving their troops up. I've got to call them troops, William, because the cartel is pretty well organized now. They've got enough for to be mercenaries on the border to fight not only the Mexican military, but our border patrol. And this is really the wrong time to pull, except for what we're looking at with our those coming over the border. So when the Pentagon decided to do that, then we had all of the, basically, not all the Republican, but most of the states now, even Democrat states, are sending what they can of National Guard to the border to replace the 1,000, and may even send close to 2,000. And as we send our troops over to help Ukraine or help protect the borders of Ukraine and protect us against Russia. And then is it the Wagner Group? Is that what they're called? Wagner Group?
Yeah, WAGNER.
Yeah.
But they pronounce it Wagner.
Is it?
W's or V's over there.
Okay. So now they have built up their troops. Russia built up their troops. Then we're looking over in Israel, where Israel is even building up troops, is what I'm hearing this week. And lo and behold, I was even telling William earlier about China building up the troops on the China-India border. And India's building up their troops. It's like this week, I have at least a dozen articles of almost everyone in a battle is building up troops this week and bringing in more equipment, and it just seems like it's getting more aggressive. I don't want to say it's productive. I'm going to say it's getting more aggressive. No one's fighting and getting any ground won. It's just they're all building up, and that's a part of a military strategic uh, plan that you want to be in a bigger force, because you don't want to be on the low side with the other side of that border that you're fighting, or an enemy, to have 1,000 troops and you only have 50. Of course you're going to put in to equal. And then of course William, am I wrong here, or do you want to take this from me and go with this?
So, well, when you look at Ukraine, it's near military collapse. Okay, it weren't for foreign money and arms, Ukraine would collapse immediately.
Yeah.
The rest of the world sees that imminent collapse coming, and they realize that, and this is a global power dynamic. Okay. They realize that when that happens, that collapse happens, and there could be even more military encounters, right? Not just by the group of Ukraine and Russia, but NATO forces perhaps intervening, or just Polish and Latvian. Anyway, they see this war in Ukraine broadening and becoming a bigger and involving more nations. That destabilization then percolates all through the world's thinking. And they will go and build up their borders with whatever enemies they have, so that if that thing starts happening in Ukraine, that they believe it's going to happen, it's going to take all the news cycle. Everybody's going to be paying attention to that. Well, that's their chance. That's their chance to move in and do what they've been wanting to do for a long time, but it's been just too politically dangerous. And so we're going to see, with this global destabilization, we're going to see wars flare up all over the world. Almost every nation in the world has some sort of a contested border.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been the rules-based order of the world that a larger, more powerful nation can't jump the border of a lesser nation. Well, that's out the window now, and everybody realizes it, and many of them believe that they can exploit this opportunity, if you will, opportunity in time, and if they get the opportunity, they're going to use the opportunity.
Yeah.
And of course, the other side realizes that's the case, and so they build up their forces. And so what you have is a titanic amount of military competition going out all over the world, and then it flashes into regional wars all over different continents. And when those regional wars start to coalesce into multi-continental wars, suddenly you've got a world war on your hands.
Yeah. And the thing, William, this isn't just troops in itself. This can be our Navy buildup of ships. It could be our Army and a buildup of not only men, but equipment. Our Air Force, more airplanes.
It's not just military anymore, okay? What happens when these wars start is they have a terrible logistic chain that they have to create suddenly, because most nations don't have logistic chains.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is people get conscripted into the Army. They're drafted. Most people don't realize that civilians are drafted too into industry.
Mm-hmm.
There's two ways to get your military products done. Is you can either pay them high, and so people want to come and work for the industry, which is what we typically do in the United States, or you can use the stick. You go to work or we'll kill you. So it's not just a military issue. It's a military and full society issue once these regional conflicts flare up.
Yeah. And now this I found. Now we know we do exercises, but the one that we really haven't been doing much is maybe because we've been at war in the Middle East, but um, I. Iran's Revolutionary Guard runs Drill Undisputed Lands as U.S. military presence grows in the region. And they said the military drill Wednesday on disputed islands in the Persian Gulf, and the U.S. military increased its presence in the region. As I was saying, they're increasing the military, the equipment, the ships, everything. And this drill on um, um, focused, and it went through the Guard and also landed forces in the greater Atum Island. An Iran state-run IRNA news agency reported. Now, swarms of small, fast boats took place, along with paratroopers, drones, and truck-launched surface-to-sea missiles. And they were showing it on their TV. Now, the thing about this is Iran, not only looking at the Middle East, but they are now claiming that Israel is so weak that it's weakened itself back to 1940. And William, you could tell them, about the whole, propaganda. We can't believe anything comes out of Iran, folks. And so if you're seeing this, that they're in a weakened state, I wouldn't believe it. They have, and I'll let William get to it here in a sec. But this is what Iran is claiming. So they think if they can overtake Israel, they can overtake the United States not only in the Persian Gulf, but they can control the Middle East. Okay, go ahead, William.
Okay, so there's two or three things you had going there. First, it is propaganda in that Israel is militarily weaker than it had been in a long time. We've given them, well, not given them, but they've purchased some of our best fourth generation and fifth generation aircraft. So they have a good base of aircraft, but they don't have a good base of tanker aircraft. They've only got a couple of those, and they don't have a good base of air to ground, meaning that attack surface air missile sites and anything in the air that would contest them. They don't have those types of aircraft. So what they have is a defensive shield around Israel. All right. Israel primarily is a defensive country. It's not an offensive country. Well, Iran is afraid now because they've pushed this whole enrichment plan, and Israel sees it as a existential threat. Mm-hmm. Now, Israel right now, the other thing is Israel right now has a contest of ideas going on because of legislation that weakens the courts in Israel, and so Iran's is trying to use that popular uprising about that legislation as a way to weaken the country. They're using that propaganda. They're trying to foment unrest in Israel, which it won't have any real effect because most Israelis act on reason rather than emotion for the most part. So that's something that's going on. Now, they believe if you take out Israel, you can take out the United States. So why is that? It's because we have so many people here of Jewish extraction, right? That's not the case. These aren't dual citizens. They're not. The United States will go on just fine without Israel, but Israel won't go on fine without the United States. So yeah, it's just, it is what it is. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we provide support, and we've always been supportive of the Jewish people in the Holy Land, and we'll continue to be into the future.
Yeah. And I think Iran is a long way from being able to get in there and do a war against either us or Israel. I think it's quite a few years off yet.
So
Uh,
Iran wants to go back to the Persian Empire, which they had before the Ottoman Empire, which was the Turks. They want to have a world empire.
mhm.
And this is back to the one world government thing, and they see it as their uh, born right to rule over the rest of the world, and they're being frustrated.
Yeah. And now this one we talked about a little bit because there could be a lot going on of why the U.S. would send um, National Guard to Australia. And I when I first read it, U.S. Coast Guard sends its deployable specialized forces to Iran for the first time, and it sent 100 members of its high-risk deployable special forces to the massive Talisman Sabre exercise underway in Australia, but for a lengthy time after the fact. And this is they said special teams for the down under for the first time joined drills after more than a decade of regular reports of Chinese Coast Guard maritime militia harassing vessels in the neighboring countries. Or, yeah, in the neighboring
Yeah.
countries and the Western Pacific waters off the coast. And so now I knew of them um, trying to be over there fishing, trying to take over the fishing spots where they could gather many fish, not just a couple. They were doing nets and nets worth. And not only that, but they were harassing and chasing off Australian fishermen. But then, we started hearing that China was threatening that when they're done with Taiwan, they're going to go to Australia. And so that's what I kind of thought it was. But then they're having special drills, just like over in the, I mean, we're deploying so many troops to different places just
So
for drills. So go ahead, William.
Tasmanian Sea is between Australia and Papua New Guinea, and it is a strait of transportation into the Indian Ocean.
Yeah.
You can go through there, and
And now that would be
they're
very
making
important
sure.
to China control.
Well, if Japan made a mistake, they didn't control Australia quick enough during the Second World War, and if they had, our fight into the Western Pacific would have been a lot more miserable than it was, and it was absolutely miserable to begin with, to the point of being willing to drop a nuclear weapon. But that was the mistake China made, Japan made, was not expanding into Australia quick enough, and that gave a place for the United States to build a base and ship its products a lot closer to the fronts. So China is looking to do what Japan did, which is build up their military, right, especially their Navy, and grab all the assets of the Western Pacific. And Japan got the idea from the English, all right, with all their ships on their island, and then so they repeated what the British had done for their colonization, and now China is doing what Japan did, okay, and they're all looking at their past actions and what should have been, what was done, and what should have been done, and now Australia is truly in the crosshairs. So we send our people over there so that we can get an idea of what the approaches are to ports and where the Chinese are likely to land, and try to build a port before can respond to Chinese being on their own territory. So all of this is happening at the same time. Well, these Coast Guard Special Operations Unit is going to go in and map all these areas and help the Australians set up a strategy of defense that actually is functional rather than aspirational. And they're very able to do that.
And it's, it's not just there in Australia, because we're seeing that in Taiwan, but now we're looking farther into the future of even Africa, because Africa was after that. But Africa is willing to take in China and for the Belt and Road, and they own a lot of the diamond mines there. A lot of the resources of minerals.
Well, they're resource rich, but they're wealth poor.
Yeah.
The Western Pacific, probably half of the Western Pacific is the Asian tigers, and they're very wealthy, okay, in comparison to the world. And then you have the lesser islands, and they're a little more like Africa, but they can be exploited for a place to put sea bases, air bases, and extract resources. So yeah, that's what's going on.
Now, William, where I would expect troops, and I was looking at the whole the importance of the troops that we're sending to different countries. We're there to help Australia, we're there to help Taiwan, we're in Ukraine, Haiti, I think it's Haiti, but where I'm not seeing it is in Florida. We have got Cuba with China spies not very far from our coast. And you would really think that the Gulf or one of those states, we would start seeing a buildup of troops. Now, when I said that, and I thought about the first article, one of the first articles I grabbed, where we are sending troops to the border. Now, it could mean the cartel, or it could mean we're going to start building up the troops on our border. If we got China right there, and we know that Putin has put missile launchers there, and they're even putting a base down there. They're not just doing this just for thrills. This is,
so
go ahead.
We use Florida for training. We have a lot of military bases in Florida and on the Florida Panhandle. So they want to keep track of what's going on with our military and our communications. And if they can threaten us in that area, that's good for them, because there's so many troops in the area. So, yeah and no. It's bad, and it's also kind of meaningless as well. Now, if they try to put nuclear weapons, that's an entirely different deal. But just conventional weapons, they're never going to be able to pile up enough weapons on the Cuban island to make a concerted attack on the United States and make it viable.
Yeah. See, a lot of people are worried about that, though, because they know the spies are down there, and they're like, oh, well, they could hit us easily. And it's like you said, they don't have enough.
They can attack us. They can attack us, and there would be loss of life, but they can't sustain it. That's the key. And they'd end up losing their island over it.
Well,
so
yeah, see, that's
happening as well.
When you are putting military on an island, or like even Taiwan, you have to be able to sustain yourself for the longevity of the fight. And see, that's what Zelensky is even saying for Ukraine. He said he'll keep this war going forever just to win. I mean, that not a good strategy. I mean, that's not a good strategy. That I'll just keep going until I win. When he can't really sustain himself, because they don't have a military.
That was the German Nazi strategy, and what happened was they ended up destroying their own country.
Yeah.
that's what happens. Anytime you're willing to fight to the last man, you will destroy your nation because you won't have enough populace to be able to protect the land territory. And Zelensky's making a terrible mistake that way.
Yeah.
You want to maintain the maximum amount of your population in a battle, in a fighting condition, so that you can repel other people. You don't go and say, well, this little piece of territory is more important than the entire nation as a whole. And that's radical Nazi battle strategy. It doesn't work.
No, it's not even sensible.
They always run out of equipment or oil or something, and when that happens, it's a full-scale collapse of everybody involved.
And listening to you mention that, and should we, or like Europe with Zelensky, be willing to put how much money, like we put billions in, how much money and how much support is Europe going to give Zelensky if they see a losing battle at this? He don't even have his own military. He had mercenaries.
So there's support, and then there's too much support. You can have too little support, you can have support, and you can have too much support. I believe at this point Zelensky is getting too much support.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that too much support, he's being bellicose, and he's not just wasting the Western world's weaponry. He's wasting his population in the process as well. Mm-hmm. So it's not good for anybody involved. So yeah, we're over supporting Ukraine right now.
Yeah. Now, the other thing is with the troops. You were telling me about the Marines. They moved the troops a lot.
So on our southern border right now, they're pulling 1,000 troops away, but they're at the end of their 90-day rotation. Okay, and so a lot of the states are bringing their guards on, National Guard online, and sending them to the southern border, like West Virginia just did that. So what Western Virginia is, the governor issued orders to the National Guard to activate them and then send a number of them to the southern border. But there's something different in these orders than what we've seen in the past, in that it gives these troops the ability to protect themselves along the border. Meaning, if they're attacked, they can respond in kind. That's new, but we always rotate our troops in and out. And here's the reason is, one, they're away from their families for a long time, and so, it's a social issue. But more importantly, it gives the troops a little time to decompress, so they'll give them a couple weeks of limited activity. And when they decompress like that, they remember all the lessons that they've had. And they'll go through endless briefings to figure out what mistakes they've made. Then they take all that's been learned by those deployed troops and they fold it back into the training programs, all the way to boot camp, all right? All the way up through the process. And so every time we get involved with somebody, we learn as much as we can learn about the terrain, the disposition of the people, what their likes and dislikes are, things that we do that irritate them the most, and we should do it if we want to have a relationship with them. All these things get involved. But the United States routinely rotates their troops out, and in the case of the Marines, we want the Marines to have their expeditionary forces particularly, but all the Marines have experience on every different continent, on every different type of fighting field, so that no matter when they get the call they already have a really good idea of what they need to do to prepare and ship out in a big hurry. So they've worked all these variables out previously to being called up, because they've had experience in all these places. So they've generated different training scenarios for those things, and also plans for shipping their troops in and out of areas. And when one branch of the service does something very successfully, other branches notice. Like during Vietnam, we had a high loss rate of aircraft to the number of aircraft we shot down. Well, the Navy instituted a thing called Top Gun, or Weapons Fighter School at Miramar. And lo and behold, the Navy jets that didn't have guns even installed on them started having a lot lower loss rate and a lot more success in shooting down the enemy planes. Well, the Air Force saw this and said, Shazam, that's the key. The Army saw that and said, that's the key. We're going to do large-scale exercises out in the desert. And we're not just going to do it as the Army. We're going to use the Army, Navy, and the Air Force, and use Marines as scouts. So we now do a combined arms because of this thing that happened in Vietnam with these airplanes getting shot down too much. So that has percolated through the system. And we realized that we need to rotate our troops in and out. So when we ship troops into an area, it's not a foreign situation to them. They already understand what's going to happen. And we use the experience of our older troops and always fold it back into our recruitment and our initial training of our troops, and then all the way through the system, so that we make fewer mistakes. We want to learn from every mistake we make. So we have a debriefing after every action. There's always what's called an after-action debriefing, and then an after-action report that goes up through the chain. And we learn from our mistakes. And what basically is happening there is we don't want to repeat mistakes, because now we've learned from that mistake. And so those after-action reports are really written in blood.
Mm-hmm.
They become, it's just like you have an after-action report from aircraft landing on aircraft carriers as well. The rules of how you deal with planes in emergency situations coming onto the deck of an aircraft carrier are written in blood because of mistakes that have been made and survivors being able to report what happened. So the United States is very, very, very good at that. Now, what's going on in the Pentagon is a different story, okay? That's a story for a different time. But from the colonels, full-bird colonels, down through the system in the areas of responsibility, the AORs, it's battle space, they're taking all of these lessons learned and folding them back into the system, so they'll be most effective. And what that does is it makes it creates what's called a force multiplier, mm-hmm. meaning the enemy will have to come up with a whole lot more forces to engage with our forces, because they don't have knowledge of the terrain. They don't have knowledge of geology. They don't have a knowledge of where the caves are. They don't see what I'm saying. They mm-hmm. don't have knowledge of where troops can be funneled into an area and be ambushed. The United States has already worked that out. Mm-hmm. And we see that. We send troops all over the world. We call them actually what we call them is lily pads. We have places all over the world that we project our power that way, and that actually protects the United States, because then we don't have one of these big regional wars flame up just for the sake the the fear that the United States will take troops off that lily pad and come and intervene if you get involved with something like that. And so it puts a blanket on these extraterritorial expeditions, and that's good for the United States. It costs a lot less to intimidate a nation than it does to buy them off. It's really the best bang for the buck.
And so lastly, really, is an email I got, and I discussed it, me and you discussed it for quite a long time, is the email was each president picks their generals. And is this correct? Because it seems like it was Biden that picked Milley and Lloyd, and that these are really bad. And it just kind of goes along with this administration. And now you told me that's not so.
So he does pick the head of the Joint Chiefs and the head of each military branch. Okay, he gets to pick those from wherever in the military he gets them. All right, but the rest of the system has to go through what's called promotion boards. And promotional boards, when it gets to the flag officer point, which is what the Pentagon is full of, those flag officer promotions have to go through Congress, and some can be accepted and others not accepted. So if you want to populate this flag officer region with the types of generals you want, you don't pick those generals, you just unpick the generals that you don't want. And when you miss a promotion cycle at that level in the military, that effectively ends your career, because at that level you can't make a single mistake to maintain your career towards a 4-star general. So that's how the flag officer staff is really chosen, is not through the president, but through Congress allowing promotions and disallowing promotions.
Mm-hmm. You know, and you would think now I have, and this is basically movies. This just could be a movie thing, but sometimes when on the battlefield, they'll promote people from just what they have left. If they're losing.
Yeah, so that's called a battlefield promotion, just what you said. And we could take a private and make them a sergeant immediately. And why would you make them a sergeant? Because you're filling people in that are new, because there's been some bad situations. But the person that's been there and survived has all the information to give immediately to these new people coming in, the newbies, right?
Mm-hmm.
The best way to do is rotate those forces out before they get wiped out and put them into the training program, so that the entire force structure gets new training for the area. But even if that doesn't happen, they'll do field promotions like that, so that new people come in, have the best realistic, effective leadership on the ground that they can have given the situation.
Yeah. Now, Karen asked, but Milley is still in a high place, isn't he? Yeah, he is.
Yes.
That's kind of what William explained at the beginning, is that he can be picked like that for, go ahead, William. I'll let you explain it again.
So the Joint Chiefs of Staff it's not actually like a Pentagon thing. That's more of the national security, like the military part of the National Security Council. We have a number of councils that brief the president on their specific part of the puzzle. The FBI has their part, the CIA has their part, Homeland Security has a part, and also the military. We have an intelligence agency as well, and that goes up to this Joint Chiefs of Staff. Well, the Joint Chiefs of Staff is primarily a political thing with its tentacles back down into the military, right? And they advise the president. Now, when you get a new Secretary of the Army that's brought on by the president, well, then he gets to choose who his number two is in the military. That's his right. And so he'll choose whoever it is in the military that he believes will best fit the situation so that he can be effective in leading the military in a time of war, based on the politics as well. So the military doesn't get involved in politics per se, but politics does get involved in the military. So that command flag staff at the very highest level gets involved with interacting with political procedures, political dynamics in the country. Because remember that the military, regardless of who's in power, has to continue to function, right?
Yeah.
And so they have to be able to interact logically with the administrations that they have available. But as these different political powers get involved, they will bring new people in and take new people out of that very top space. But from like two-star general down, there's no politics to be had.
Yeah.
If you engage in politics, it damages the cohesion of the units, and if you have a unit cohesion problem, suddenly when you get to the promotion boards, you've got an issue.
Now Dan Bongino, now one of his shows I heard him say, and it was, I guess, when I was riding in the car, might have been traveling, that Trump had the most Marines around him to protect him, more hands-on than any other president. So he did pick a bunch of Marines to basically be.
So the president, when he came in, he had a problem over it with the intelligence agencies. Okay, they were tapping his campaign. They were basically climbing up his tailpipe. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So what he did was said, okay, bring me the Marines, all right, and he and a force of Marines landed on the front lawn of the CIA with I think it was 4 tilt rotor aircraft, and basically stormed the CIA and took back control of the CIA.
Huh. Maybe that's why they're so quiet. Well, William, do you want to add anything else?
Yeah, I was thinking of something. I can't remember if I can remember it right this second. I lost the thought. No, I really don't have something to talk about additionally right at the moment. But just know that, here it is. So when Obama came into office, he was faced with the military that did Desert Storm, and he was uncomfortable with having a military of that strength. Now, you have to remember, certain presidents are afraid of the military. They'll take power, all right? That's always a concern of some presidents. And Obama had that, I guess, in spades. So what he decided is he was going to primarily use special forces operations, meaning he's going to use the smallest footprint he could and drones, and then he's going to shrink the military as a group for heavy armor and major field operations. And so now we have a military and a navy that has been reduced so much by that there's concerns. And so they closed they did expand the special ops community, but also, this is tragic, some of the special ops became so involved in so many different operations that I believe some of them were extinguished for fear they had too much knowledge.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So really,
we saw that helicopter shot that was shot down with all those special operations
Black Hawk Down,
people and
is that what you're talking about?
And there's a good chance, you know, that was the setup. You never know.
Yeah. So, with the troops are important. They really are. Me and William, boy, we went all the way around the world and some, and who the generals and the Marines, to give you an idea of how important these troops are. But the thing is they were bringing it up in the news all this week of troops being moved around or added, or even more military aircraft or equipment. But
we don't always put our military aircraft in for battle. We bring those into the area for training.
Mm-hmm.
And if we get the opportunity, if the U.S. military gets the opportunity to exploit some area of the world as a training environment for a temporary period of time, we are going to do it.
Yeah.
Because a superpower, whenever there's an action or a vacuum created by another superpower, you have to exploit it.
Yeah.
It's science. And so you're going to see troops moved around, not just to protect our allies and be on their borders, but to train up all of our forces should we need to go into those areas in extreme force, so that we're going to be the absolute most effective and efficient that we can be with the forces we have.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a smart idea, and you know, we had it not been for Vietnam, we wouldn't have taken all these ideas to heart. We wouldn't have the Powell Doctrine.
Yeah.
You know, during Vietnam, we got what was called the fighter mafia, grew up out of that. And that's guys that have lost buddies being shot down. These are pilots and whatnot. So when they came back stateside, they didn't build aircraft to be pursuit or interceptors. They built their aircraft to be fighters or fighter bombers.
Mm-hmm.
They made sure that every aircraft going into a contested environment had the ability to protect itself and achieve its objectives. And that came all the way up through the system, all the way through the Pentagon, out to the military suppliers, the manufacturers, and it was wildly successful. But it was because this group of people decided, you know, these are officers that were coming up through the system, that they were going to act in lockstep to ensure that we had these types of fighting weapons. And when we did that, we also got the A-1 Abrams tanks. We were able to get the Bradley fighting vehicles out of that. We got the super carriers were part of that as well. So all these lessons learned helped us, but it was the fighter mafia that created the fighter weapons school at Miramar, Top Gun, and the red flag for Air Force that really transformed the military.
Mm-hmm.
But that transformation has terrified a number of presidents.
Mm-hmm. Now, Linda was asking about with the Biden administration being very weak. Wouldn't it affect our military training? No, it wouldn't, because that's why we have the generals, and that's why we have them in charge, or even the Pentagon. It cuts
the
out.
Military training cycles is controlled by orders from our command staff that was demanded of by Congress. So Congress and their the power of the purse string has created the environment that, or facilitated the environment that the military has for its training and training cycles.
Mm-hmm.
So no president comes in and changes that type of thing. What they do is they restrict the number of dollars and how big the military can be at that time. But they don't have any real power over like the time-compliant technical orders on aircraft, time-compliant technical orders on battle spaces, the time-compliant technical orders over areas of responsibility. Presidents don't have any real control of that. That's controlled by Congress. What the president does is, once Congress declares war, he becomes the commander-in-chief, and through his chain of command, directs the military into a military operation, okay? But he doesn't get to choose who's going to be in the forward forces. He doesn't get to do any of that. But what he does get to do is they'll give him recommendations on who's the best fighting force for this area, how that is going to impact the military as a general, otherwise, what logistics he's going to need. They give him options that any civilian wouldn't have any idea that was available, and why it would be good to use these options. So there's a couple things going on there, but the president is not in absolute control of the military. Congress has a bigger part to play in it because of the purse string. And then the courts also, the Supreme Court can tell the UCMJ that they've gone too far with the Uniform Code of Military Justice and rein in the military court system. The military court system is far more restrictive than the civilian court system. Yeah. So there's a bunch of different things going on there, and they all play a part in how our military operations work.
Mm-hmm. And if it's how their culture or characteristics are. Now, that's fine on the media front, but when you go to war, there's certain things you have to do. And if you're gonna, everybody has to wear the standard issue uniform. They have to comply to all the military rules and regulations, or they'll be kicked out. See, that's where what you see on the news is such propaganda that they want to put out. Well, this guy is, let's say, transgender. Well, okay, but you know what? A soldier's a soldier. Me and William talked about the government issue. Once you sign that little dotted line, then once you get in, you're going to do what they say. It's not what the military, not what the, CBS News or NBC wants to do a story on you about, because, they're not going to be there on the battlefield to say what the military can and can't do to you. So once you sign that dotted line, that's it.
The civilian population is really free to do almost anything. The military population is almost free to do nothing. And they try to look and see, well, what is the military doing, looking into the military from the outside, and they just simply don't understand the culture.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So when you go in the military, nobody gives a crap about your pronouns or your parents or whatever. If they wanted you to have that, they issued you that, right?
That's right.
What they want is you to act and react as they want you to do.
Mm-hmm. To do as you're told.
For the safety of the nation. And so you completely lose your identity in the military. You get to keep your last name, and that's basically it. So that they have something.
You use a number. Forget your name. Well, they might call you by your last name.
It's not like prison where they just give you a number, but it does reduce your identity to being a sailor or a Marine or a soldier or an airman. We don't care about what it is you've got going in your social life. Okay, we have a pronoun for you. It's just called whatever it is branch you're in. So for me, it's an airman. It doesn't matter what color, their underwear are. We don't care. We only care if you're effective. And if you're not effective, you're gonna get abused until you either become effective or you're pushed out.
Yeah, that's
There's just
it.
no room. There's no room for that.
That's right. That's why I said once you sign the dotted line, they say you can kiss your butt goodbye. And it's not about social media. So anyway, and they sure liked that last story. Boy, the chat came alive for that one. I think everybody really, wanted to hear that, what we see on the news is what propaganda or social things they want to talk about. But, when it comes to war, when they put a gun in your hand or you're put into a tank, you're going to be wearing the same uniform, the same hat, the same everything as everybody else. And
the Department of Defense, it's like one of the people in the chat room said, you have your name, you have your rank, and you have your last four, which is your serial number.
That's it. That's it.
That's your entire identity. Nobody cares about what went on before you went in the military, and for the most part, nobody cares about what's going on in your family dynamics once you're in the military.
That's it.
What matters is you're here now. If there's a war, you're going to war with what we have now, and you better be prepared. And so we prepare them.
Yes. So, okay, well, that's it for the World War III report, folks. And share, this was a good show today. Share it. Tell your family and friends about our show. And tomorrow, I think I'm going to try to start on that special report I've been working on. And get it going because it's big. It's pretty big. And
I read that.
There's even more to it, William. It's going to be 3 or 4 parts. It's big.
She's got a documentary written. Basically, it's big.
Yeah. So and I keep adding to it. So I'm going to start that tomorrow and probably try to finish it up in between Monday and Tuesday. So it'll be a special report. I'll do a little bit of news and then I'm going to dig right back into it.
If Elly was in a media program right now at a university, it would be basically her doctoral thesis. It's really good stuff.
I ought to make a book on it. I should, I really should, but I don't have time for that. I've told people how to write a book and try to have someone help me write a book. And it's like, I can't get past the first paragraph before I'm lost or I'm just changing.
Well, a ghostwriter can just look at your reporting and pretty well develop a book profile on you. I think it might be quite effective because you go through so much information, you boil through it on a weekly basis. They would be drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah. So, all right. So, William, we'll see you on Monday. So there probably won't be a justice because it'll probably be the intro for my special report. You'll have your show, but then Tuesday I'm going to dig right in.
I think I'll talk about the draft, the civilian draft, the military draft, and how societies function during the difference between time of peace and time of war.
There you go. Well, just write it down and keep the paper. Not like me that I put it on there and I it looks like scribble, so I throw it in the garbage, and then the next day I'm searching my garbage for that piece of paper that I wrote all my info on. I've done that so much, but thank goodness I remember everything, so I just start redoing it. So, all right, folks, subscribe and hit that like button, and come on back tomorrow for the special report. I think you guys are really going to like this. So there's a lot to it. So, William, thank you very much for, being a co-host every week. And the stuff we get out is
Elly.
it's answering a lot of military questions for a lot of people.
And this gives me an opportunity, as a serviceman. Once you're an airman, you never are not an airman. It leaves with you when you leave the service. The responsibility never changes. You don't take an oath to undo the oath you had before, right? You take the oath out into society. So you give me an opportunity to help the United States, the people of the United States, and the world understand what the United States is doing and how we project our power. This gives me an opportunity to get in the fight as well.
Yeah. Okay, subscribe and hit the like button and get that bell, smash that bell, and make sure you keep an eye on it if you don't see the shows. And to make sure that, you get notified in your subscriptions or over in Facebook. I can't help that when they take away who gets to see me. They cut me down on 10, 20, 30% of who they let see my show. So that could be it if you're on Facebook. So be sure to always check YouTube. All right, folks.
Elly?
Yeah.
They intentionally try to subvert your show because, frankly, they're terrified of it.
I think so too. Just things that I know and the background numbers that I see compared to what it's letting everybody else see. And there's nothing I could do about it. So I just keep peddling. I just keep pedaling along, dragging Karen with me. So, all right, folks, you have a wonderful evening, a wonderful Wednesday, and we will see you tomorrow. And thanks again, William.
You're welcome.